Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention, maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. Hey, good everybody. How's it going? Good morning. Little intro here for you, as always, before we get to the show. I think this one might be a little bit different. I might editorialize a little bit. I typically just tell you about the show and housekeeping and whatnot before the podcast, but today's a little different. There's lots going on in trucking, and there has been for a couple of years now, especially in the news. Like anything else, sometimes we get lost in the shuffle and the news cycle takes over and people chase flashy lights off into the distance in other directions. But this week there seems to be a lot of noise about autonomous trucks. There was a placed marketing ad by Aurora Innovation in a website called Axios. And there was an interview on the Interesting Times podcast with Ross Douthat. And then, the Twitter algorithm does what it does, and there seems to be lots of discussion. There's lots going on there, and I don't think anybody's really talking about it very much from the driver's side of things. And I just wanted to let my listeners know, this show's been around for, I think I'm on season number 4 now, and I've done 7 or 8 podcasts with various people discussing issues with autonomous trucks, and I've written about it on my Substack. And I'm going to try and do a little bit more of that here shortly, because they're just going to keep pushing these robot trucks, and I think we have to lean into being Luddites. Not necessarily that the technology is bad, just that the marketing around it is terrible. They're being really disingenuous with their claims about the trucks, and more specifically, their claims about truck drivers. Something I mentioned in my book, and in a couple of articles I've written, is that, the autonomous pimps are using the same lies that the American trucking associations have been using for decades to, subsidize the corporate welfare projects that are CDL mills. And that is that there's a shortage of drivers, or that the job sucks, or a lot of this claptrap. There's a lot of problems in trucking. I wrote a whole book about, how drivers have not been treated correctly, and that's why we're here. But the thing is that trucking can be an awesome job. It's been a great industry. It's done me very well. It's allowed me to travel to other countries and have awesome experiences, and there's been some really good success stories out there in trucking. And I don't want to let the autonomous truck systems manufacturers and developers try and pretend like it's a crappy job and that we don't like it. Or, as J.D. Vance put it in an interview last year with this same Ross Douthat guy, that it just sucks sitting looking out a windshield 13 hours a day. No, some of us like it. Some of us really do enjoy trucking. And the answer is not robots. The answer is human. The answers are systemic. There's lots of ways to make trucking better and more efficient that don't involve the wholesale replacement of truck drivers. And I'm going to have more to say on this here in the very near future, because if they're going to crank up their marketing and bullshit to try and get us to accept robots on false terms, somebody has to correct the record, and I am going to throw my hat in the ring on that. If anyone's listening to this show and is not a paid subscriber to my Substack, autonomoustruckers.substack.com, perhaps you might want to change that. We're not going to get the truth. There's billions of dollars at stake, and the psyops are starting to appear, and they're only going to get more loud. I'm not even behind the wheel of a truck anymore right now, and it's very difficult to find time to bring you this content and discuss things on truck drivers' terms in the long-form manner that I do. That takes time. Time equals money. Everybody knows that. I have very little of either. So if you want to see this stuff keep going, I typically don't, I don't take any advertisers for my show. I refuse all commercial donations, as it were, promo code stuff. That's just not me. I'm not that guy. But if you enjoy what I'm doing, if you agree with what I'm doing, if you're a fellow truck driver, if you're somebody else in the industry, or somebody that's just got oodles of money and is concerned about, the human future in the face of all of this sort of tech utopianism, and you want to help me out, head on over to autonomoustruckers.substack.com and become a paid subscriber to this show. It would really, really help me out, and I want to be there and fight back against the false narratives they're going to use while they try and replace us. I think that's it for the editorializing. Yeah, two good guests on this one. Zach Miller and Mark Stone from the Trucking Association of New York joined the show a couple weeks ago to discuss, issues in trucking local to the state of New York, local to New York City. I think there's some interesting stuff here. If you're one of these folks in a dense urban environment and you have to make all your deliveries work and everyone still has to move around and cooperate, and then also those of you who are into the environment, Mark and Zach are members of an organization that seeks to keep the air clean, but also be real about how we can do that and not put the trucking industry out of business while we're seeking to keep the air clean. Very, very interesting discussion with these guys. Mark's a salesman at Volvo. We discussed a little bit about Volvo technology near the end. So the Volvo enthusiasts amongst my listener base will enjoy that. And something else I mentioned near the end of the show is a presentation I gave at Cornell University here in Ithaca. Obviously, that's happened since the end of the show, or since we recorded this, sorry. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes if you want to see me discuss my book, End of the Road, Inside the War on Truckers, along with various issues the industry is facing today. It's about 90 minutes. There was some Q&A. I guess there was about 30 people in the crowd. It was pretty well received. Yeah, I think you guys will enjoy that. So that's down there. I'll also have links to Zach Miller and Mark Stone's LinkedIn and to the Trucking Association of New York, and a few photos there on the Substack. If you're listening to this on another platform, please head over to autonomoustruckers.substack.com. Smash your email address in there. You'll never miss any of these podcasts or my written content. As mentioned earlier, if you are of means and want this project to keep going and buy me some time to write and podcast more in defense of the human element and human-driven truck driving, help a brother out. Otherwise, pass the show around. Word of mouth is the best advertising, and it's all that I can afford. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, corrections, or hate mail, you want to tell me I'm wrong, you want to call me an asshole, you want to tell me I'm doing a good job, go right ahead. Gordilocks at protonmail.com. If you would like to order a copy of my book, End of the Road, Inside the War on Truckers, head over to creedandculture.com. There's a hardcover, e-reader, and audiobook versions. The audiobook is narrated by me, so if you want to hear 12 hours of the dulcet and velvety tones you're hearing now, go do it. Anybody that likes audiobooks will thoroughly enjoy it. Reviews have been coming in, and over at Amazon and a few other places. It seems like people really dig it, and I hope you will too. All right, let's get to it. Mr. Mark Stone and Zach Miller of the Trucking Association of New York. All right, 3, 2. Okay, everybody. Welcome back to the Voice of Gord podcast. I'm Gord, and this is my voice. Today, I have two other voices for you to hear, and sort of very interesting connection has been made in my own life. One of my wife's friends is getting married to one of the guests we're about to speak with, and it just so happens He's a salesman at a Volvo dealer, and you all know how much I like Volvos and other plasticated abominations that have turned our roads into ugliness. And he also works for the Trucking Association of New York. And he's brought along another gentleman from the Trucking Association of New York. So, opposites attract, and why not hear from the other side of things? So please welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Stone and Mr. Zach Miller.
Thanks for having us, Gord.
Yeah, thanks. Really appreciate it.
So Mark, I think is in works for Burr Truck Centers in Binghamton,
Correct. Yep.
and you're also some kind of lobbyist for the Trucking Association of New York.
Yes, interesting story how we got to that point. But yeah, my name is Mark Stone. I've been in the trucking industry since 2010, 2008 rather. And prior to that, 25 years in the automotive industry as well, through fixed ops and side of the business. Got into the trucking business in 2008, right at the perfect time, as you recall, Gord, down on the downturn. So it's been quite the ride, and working in the fixed ops side initially, moving forward to general management positions, and then into the sales roles. And currently, my position at Bird Truck and Trailer Sales out of Vestal, New York, includes multiple hats as the general manager, director of sales, and a New York State lobbyist for the state of New York and the automotive trucking and transportation industry. I also serve on the board of directors for Clean Communities of Central New York. And then I'm on the Government Affairs Committee with Zach from the Trucking Association of New York.
Busy guy.
Indeed.
So, Mr. Miller, you're joining us from Queens.
Yep, from Forest Hills, Queens. So I'm Zach Miller, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Trucking Association of New York. I did start out as a designated New York City person for Tanny, so that's would explain my location. And now I handle all government affairs, so it's a lot of back and forth. From the city to Albany, which is our capital. I've been in trucking most of my life. I grew up in it. My dad is a traffic attorney, so most of his clients are trucking companies. I would do his paperwork, his calendar, his invoicing when I was in high school and college, and I actually remember preparing his parking tickets. That used to be a big thing in New York City, defending the parking tickets. I tell you, those were the days. So I remember first thing in the morning. I'm leaving my house, getting ready to go to school, and there are fleet managers in front of our house in the car, just passing paperwork back and forth to my dad. I'm just like, this is crazy. This is a crazy industry. And so why wouldn't you want to be involved in it? So, when after I graduated college, I worked in energy a little bit, and then I was just like, nope, want to go back to trucking. So I've been in trucking ever since. And interestingly, I also, similar to Mark, I am on the board of directors of the Empire Clean Cities Coalition. So that's the metro region's clean cities community. But yeah, it is a amazing industry to be in a very complex state to operate in. I think we'll put it that way.
Oh yeah, I mean New York City is I don't know how many gazillion people live there. I've trucked through it a few times, had to go to Long Island and go up and over the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, and I've been stuck on the BQE, and
Hmm.
I I think when I was much younger and still lived in Canada, the first time I ever made a delivery in the city was to Long Island City, which is part of Queens.
Yeah, Long Island City is like the last part in Queens before you hit the
Yeah,
water.
exactly. So if you're coming west on the island back towards Manhattan, the last exit before you
Yep.
go in the tunnel, there's an industrial area north of the highway there. And there was a customer we would take steel plate that was produced in Canada. And then I delivered drill, like an air track drill, which is sort of a kind of a piece of mining equipment they use for poking holes in rocks and putting explosives and stuff in them. And I was on the other side of the island, so I had to like I can't remember if it was the Lincoln Tunnel or the Holland Tunnel, but anyway, I come all the way down Manhattan Island with this float. Took the gooseneck apart, drove the thing off, and I was in and out before rush hour traffic started. So I was pretty impressed with myself with that one crazy delivery.
That's the way to do it.
But yeah, New York is something else. My wife lived there for 10 years. When I was sort of when I started dating her and I would go visit, I would always bring a bike with me because trying to drive around New York City is just a pain in the butt. And we mentioned my associate Ben Furness earlier, who's a big cyclist and public transit advocate, and there's a reason for that in a place like New York. But you also have to tango with trucks because things need to be delivered. So
That's exactly it.
even though it's Gotham City, the Big Apple, and all of the stereotypes and stuff that come with that, it still has to work, and people still need to be able to ride their bikes and drive 18 wheelers through the same spot, and we all have to get along, right?
Exactly.
Can you, before we get into the Tanny stuff, could you guys tell me a little bit about this clean coalition? Sometimes these terms are a little vague, and I'm kind of interested to know what you guys do on that side of your work.
So it's interesting. I think there are 70 something clean communities throughout the country. Is established by the Department of Energy. And the purpose is really to create these communities. And I think you said it really well a few minutes ago about how, hey, you have some of these, every city is a little different. So you look at New York City and you say, hey, we need a very robust public transportation system. People like to bike around, people, want to walk and explore green space and all that. Well, at the same time, you have economic needs, including trucks needing access to make deliveries and to safely maneuver around this very complex city. So you have these clean communities that come in and they basically say, hey, what can we do to um, build our own little communities, get all these stakeholders together, work towards a common goal? How do we ensure that this essential industry has the tools they need to operate? But also, what are some ways that they might be able to improve, particularly as it relates to efficiency? So, what are some alternative fuels that might make sense? How do we get electric trucks in the hands of fleets that have operational use cases for them? Are we involving the right regulatory bodies? Are there grant opportunities that maybe, through public-private partnerships, we could get some fleets to pilot some equipment, learn from that, and then take that to the general market. So those are the types of things that clean communities really focus on. New York City specifically, we focus on things like renewable diesel, the potential to use cargo bikes, quads, the potential to use the waterways to distribute freight, things like that. And it's been a very good organization that Tanny has worked with in the past, to the point where I felt very comfortable joining the board 2 years ago, I want to say, after they had some longtime members cycle off.
Right, and you're doing the something similar, but up here, Mark.
Correct. Same exact thing. And I was asked to become a part of the program with Barry Carr, to help bridge the gap between the environmentalist and what we're trying to accomplish from the truck side of the business, because I'm sure we'll get into. We lost 1 year of business on the truck side in New York State because of these mandates, of requiring dealers in the state of New York to sell one bat sell to get to sell 13 diesel trucks. We had to sell one battery electric truck in order to get trucks to sell in the state of New York.
And that was not going to work for very obvious reasons if you're in the trucking industry.
Correct,
Right.
correct. Zach.
Maybe not so obvious to the general public or the types of people that Zach is dealing with down in the city?
Yeah, it was, this was one of the, we talk a lot about government affairs and issues that come across our plate. And they're all important and they're all serious. They all have real world ramifications. But every so often you get one that is genuinely an existential threat. And when it came to the advanced clean trucks rule, that was genuinely an existential threat. Equipment was not able to move. Dealers were pretty much forced to sell equipment that they did not have a consumer base for. And so dealers were stuck. They couldn't move equipment. Fleets were not able to purchase new equipment, at least new equipment in the state of New York. It created some very, very serious problems very, very quickly. And there was a lot of, before we even get to when, hey, they were under ACT, we were incredibly frustrated because we were talking with the state. This was back in 2019 about things that the state is talking about today, the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act, the CLCPA, and these mandate timelines that were put in place as it relates to electrification and decarbonization, all, or I should say for the most part, goals that we all share, right? We all want to preserve our environment. We all want to live and work and travel in clean communities and make sure that the air is as clean as it could be, that every building is as efficient as it could be, that every vehicle is efficient as it could be. But we also live in the real world. And there are very serious roadblocks to meet both the mandates and the target years that were put in place. And the state did not want to hear it at the time. And so lo and behold, they put in the CLCPA, which included the Advanced Clean Trucks Rule mandate. COVID-19 happens, and we lose, at least
Yeah.
2 years of potential progress on any of these. Whether the state was actually going to start working on it, who knows? But the fact is, COVID happened and they didn't. Okay. Coming out of the post-COVID world, there was never a effort to recalibrate, and so we get very quickly to 2024, 2025, the advanced clean trucks sales mandate starts to kick in, and the dealers are left with vehicles they can't sell, equipment that people, the equipment people want, which is the most efficient on the market, they can't get. The state had not invested one publicly facing medium or heavy duty electric vehicle charging. The utilities were not given the sort of investment in the renewables to pump up the grid that we needed to see. And there were still a lot of early sort of like early generation, and Mark can speak about this much better than I can, but early generation electric equipment that still kind of really needed to work through some challenges before fleets can use it in any way that match their operational use case. And from our point of view, from an association, right, and just the industry representatives, not necessarily a dealership or a fleet specific, the frustration is very much, hey, we have ideas that are common sense ideas that will actually have a financial cost to the industry that we're willing to do because we believe in this, but we need multiple options, right? We can't have a one size fits all. We need a menu of options. We need a realistic timeline. We need this to be done holistically. And we can get to a place that everybody's going to feel comfortable with, but it cannot be one size fits all. It cannot be electric or nothing. And even then, the act, the CARB regulation as written, clearly didn't even account, put aside that didn't account for the real world. It didn't even have a basic understanding of the trucking industry. And now one of the things that we have to push back against, in addition to the fear that mandates can come back again, is just the basic operational use cases for some of this equipment. And I feel like a bit of a crazy person when I'm in these, and I'm in meetings with really great people. Like at least New York has really great people working for DEC and NYSERDA, and like people who want to do the right thing and understand the industry a little bit better than I think your average elected official does. But trying to say we get it, we know for a long time. We had very specific vehicle classifications and we number them and we have pictures of the trucks that meet that class and all that. Cool. When we're talking about electric equipment, that's not a complete circle.
No.
And we have operational use cases in some of these classes that are viable, but in a lot of cases we don't. And even those where it's viable, it depends on the product that they're hauling. And it's just like, it's very, very, very complicated. And you put this very, very, very rigid system in place that includes a very rigid classification. And we're trying to like unravel all of this while still making sure we support incentives to get people electric trucks where it does meet that operational use case. So it's like it's very much the proverbial, one step forward, two steps back kind of thing, while trying to get to a goal that industry deems feasible.
Well, yeah, you got lots going on in what you just said there, Zach. People not understanding the sort of very complex nature of trucking, right? And as you put it, use cases. There's different types of trucking, different industries it serves, different routes, different schedules, different requirements. It's very, very messy. And you get out in the sort of media and online, you sort of get, I think like a big problem we have, and I'm going to criticize the only social media platform I use, Twitter, is that you get the Elon Musk fanboys out there that know nothing about trucking and just are constantly posting pictures of the Tesla semi saying, ooh, truck drivers are going to love this. This is going to completely revolutionize trucking. The thing can only go 400 and something miles on a single charge and then has to sit plugged into a charging station again for I don't know how many hours.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We don't have the capacity to power it, don't have the electrical grid. We're missing all of these key components. And then there's the charging thing, right? Like a lot of trucking operations, as you know, depend on 24-hour service. You'll have two guys working 12-hour shifts. It takes 10 minutes to fuel the truck, and then it just keeps going. Can't do that with electric trucks. This idea you just told me about, this mandate New York imposed, you have to have 13 to sell 13 ICE internal combustion engine trucks, you must sell one electric one. There's not that many electric trucks on the market, and again, they have serious limitations. Even Musk's Tesla semi is like can only work in certain applications. But then there's this guy I've had on my podcast like 4 times. He's from Canada, just like me, and he is an entrepreneur, and him and a bunch of his business associates have developed this platform, and they call themselves Edison Motors. Right? There's Tesla and Edison, the two big electric guys. And their idea, Edison Motors' idea is like, look, we don't have all of the electric generation or grid capacity, but we can make like a step up vehicle, right? So we can make an electric truck, but what we'll do is we'll put a small generator on it, like a diesel locomotive, right? Like trains. Trains have a diesel engine that drives a generator that runs electric wheels underneath it, right? Same idea. Plus, we'll add regenerative braking like a Toyota Prius. So if it's coming down a hill, you have all that potential energy, wind it up, boom, put it in the batteries, you can keep going. And so they've got this really great platform. They've built prototype models. They've got all these investors. They're doing their thing in Canada. Will anybody get out of Edison's way? The British Columbia provincial government have done nothing but get in Edison's way. The Canadian federal government is hung up on the definition of the diesel engine that's on the truck to produce electricity as a backup when it runs out of regenerative braking or shore power it may have got the night before. Hold on a minute, because we can't qualify that as an on-road or off-road, and they're all confused because they're bureaucrats. They've held up the production of Edison Motors. Then they try and bring it to the American market. And I think Chase said something like, maybe this is not the exact number, but it was something similar to this like 13-1 thing where I don't know if it was USDOT, somebody told Edison, if you want to sell your truck in the American market, you must build, because he's looking more towards like heavy duty stuff, logging, off highway, oil field, because that's sort of the industries he's worked in.
And they said to him, you have to sell 40 normal highway tractors with your platform on them before you're allowed to sell one of the heavy duty version. And then it has to go through all the same safety testing that it already went through in Canada, which is to the exact same standards. So this guy is building a bridging technology that will get us part way to the electric future. And everywhere he turns, the government just keeps getting in his friggin' way. He's got investors lined up a mile long. The Canadian government had, because of their very weird rules about who can invest, have cut them off at the knees with who can invest and how much they can give them. Then they put all these regulatory hurdles in them. Then the American government gets in his way and don't want him to sell any trucks here. And it's like, this is the guy that's trying to help you. What's going on here? And I think like New York City, you mentioned the lack of charging stations. Okay, cool. So if we want to have let's have these electric trucks that only run a diesel generator part of the time. When it runs, it's at the same peak RPM, peak torque, doesn't burn near as many emissions as a normal truck does, and it's only running part of the time, and it's electric the other half of the time. It's basically a hybrid. Let's do that, and nobody will help this guy, and nobody will get out of his way. It's just incredible.
What's interesting about this whole standard is that I found appalling. And unfortunately, I didn't have anyone to work with, but the Trucking Association of New York and Zach will tell you, I was pretty persistent and probably, and it upset people. But when your life is on the line and your career's on the line, it's easy for people to say all these things, and until it's your job that's on the line, right? And this is all I know. I think the most appalling part of all of it was that several things actually is that, and Zach and I went to Albany and sat in front of the EPA and sat in front of all these people for a while. And I think the difficulty was that, number one, when New York State legislators signed the California Air Resources Board Advanced Clean Truck Rule, first I was like, what's good in California is not good for New York. And that sounds great. And these legislators signed one-page bill. I got a copy of the bill. And this whole California Air Resources Board Advanced Clean Truck Rule Act, it's roughly over 160 some pages, Zach. I can't remember the number, but
it's significant.
It's significant. But our legislators signed one piece of paper. And if you read it, it's like the best steak you could ever have at a restaurant, what mouth-watering steak, and it sounds great on paper, and they all sign it, and that's it. They've moved on and put this in place. And then, of course, the oversight to that is the Department of Environmental Conservation. So they signed a one-page bill, never seeing what actually was behind it. Then I had to prove that to legislators what they actually signed up for, and then they started to backpedal. Once they realized that this wasn't ever going to work right in New York State. And then sitting in front of the Department of Environmental Conservation, who is the enforcement of this Advanced Clean Truck Rule, and sitting in front of them, multiple meetings. I had 5 or 6 different meetings with them, and they would say to me that I'd say, okay, listen, we're trying to clean air in the state of New York. And I'm all about cleaning the air. We were the first ones in New York State to put a DC fast charger on our lot, preparing ourselves for what was coming, and really focusing on duty cycle, as we spoke before, on that last mile delivery where the truck makes sense to run battery electric trucks, where you in city, 100-mile radius, restaurant deliveries, those type of things. Perfect application for it. But DEC told us that that this is on the new trucks, not about old trucks. And I hate to use the term dirty diesels, but prior to SCR technology, of course, trucks were significantly higher NOx. And I understand that they want to clean the air, and pre-2008 emissions, that would make sense. I said, would it make more sense to start this by trying to get people like dollar for diesels, which we can get into later, to get out of these older trucks and upgrade their inventory into the 2010 emissions with the diesel exhaust fluid, and start the process slowly to get there, to build up infrastructure, have enough time to put this in place so it makes sense, so you're getting people along. And they go, well, there's no mandates on used trucks. I said, well, wait a second. So we're trying to clean the air. It's okay for me as a dealer to go buy, hundreds of these 2007 emissions trucks and then resell them back to the market with brand new engines and let people drive them. They go, again, Mark, there's no mandates on used trucks. And I sat there and listened to this for a while, and I go, this is hypocrisy at its best. I mean, you're decimating an industry, but we can go sell these dirty diesels back out into the environment. Furthermore, when they put bids out for trucks themselves, I have an email from the Department of Environmental Conservation. Zach is aware. They can't find use cases for them for their own vehicles. So they're telling us that we need to go do this, but then they won't buy the battery electric trucks themselves because they're too expensive and they can't get the duty cycles out of them and they can't find a use case for them.
Well, yeah. Doesn't that sound all very familiar? Well, so on the question, I don't want to say push back, but I think like in the industry, the mandates for emission cleaning technology have been very contentious because a lot of those systems are fragile. They impose additional costs. This became very apparent during COVID when you couldn't get the chips and various stuff that would actually run these SCR systems, and trucks would be broke down and stay broke down for 5-6 months at a time. I'm sure, Mark, the guys down at Freightliner in south of Binghamton there. What are they called again? I'm having a brain fart on the sort of Freightliner network of dealers here in New York. Anyway, the service gentleman there, when I was hauling propane for these guys out of Candor, my truck went there to get the emission system fixed like 3 times in the 2 years I worked there, and it was always the same stuff. And the dealer told me, he's like, "Hey man, 75% of our work is fixing emission systems."
Yeah,
which is just something I say. So I wrote this book, End of the Road, Inside the War on Truckers, and I have one chapter in the book on the trucks themselves. And I tried to look around to see if anybody had done a study, like an economic inquest, research, something into the amount of downtime and financial loss assessed against the trucking industry and thus its customers, with breakdowns and downtime and everything else associated with these mandates. And I came across like some interesting numbers about how much particulate matter and NOx and carbon dioxide and all the fun stuff coming out of the exhaust pipe had already been reduced in motors before 2007. And then the mandate tried to take, these guys have already achieved some ridiculous amount of reduction, and that wasn't enough. And we had to keep going with it. And then we put on these SCR DEF systems. 20 years later, some of them work just fine. If you maintain it and clean the filters and do everything, you should be okay. But getting from 2007 to here cost the economy an awful lot of money. And I don't think there's like anybody out there that's tried to even count it.
Agreed. And Tracy Road equipment is and wait till the EPA standards come out. So gosh, we just
Tracy Road. That's right, Tracy Road. Right, Tracy Road. Why am I having a brain fart on the community just south of Binghamton, like exit 1 and 2, when you come off 81? Oh, I gotta look at my. It's on the tip. When you know something, it's on the tip of your tongue and it drives you insane because you can't remember what it is.
For sure.
Oh man,
we just had a podcast. With my group, Volvo Trucks North America, there's some things I can say, some things I can't say, but what I can say, which is
Kirkwood, New York.
Kirkwood,
That's it. Yeah.
Kirkwood. Yeah. The EPA standard for next year that rolls out in the beginning of Q4, actually. So going into Q1 of next year, all manufacturers are going to face this.
Can you clarify something for my audience and for me? I think I know the answer to this, but just in case anyone's listening, there was an announcement that came out from EPA director. I think his name is Lee Zeldin.
Yeah, Lee Zeldin.
At the end of March, and it actually came out while I was at the Mid-America Trucking Show in Louisville, Kentucky, that they were going to eliminate some rule to do with sensors on these systems. And a lot of people interpreted that as finally we're getting rid of them completely, but that's not the case.
Correct. Yeah, the depth quality sensors are no longer required for NOx sensors to be used as alternative. EPA urea quality sensor guidelines does not affect upcoming 2027 emissions. That's true. However, the new EPA mandates are going to increase truck prices by just alone on the truck side, anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 to cost today. On top of that, the standard warranty of 60 months, 100 has to be standard 60 months, 450,000. Now there is some things going on at the federal level to talk about cost pricing as it relates to warranty, but we don't know the answer to that yet. Of course, when you have that much warranty added to a vehicle, obviously your costs go up, right? So I think the OEMs and the federal level are working on figuring that out still. We anticipate total cost roughly to be about $25,000 higher than next year.
For initial purchase price of the equipment.
Yeah, not to include FET, which is 12% of your selling price, correct? So
yeah.
Truck prices are getting kind of ridiculous to begin with, but like, how many straws can you pile upon the camel's back?
Correct. And then all the safety requirements. I mean, all these trucks now are getting pretty close to being prepped for autonomous. So these trucks have 35 different modules in them. You have to meet all the safety standards with the forward-facing side mitigation, telematics, a lot of oversight right now in this industry. The trucks are going to weigh about 50 pounds heavier than they are today as well. And who wants to be the guinea pig coming out of the first year with new standards? So I think you get it being a trucker, Gord, that we're in for a rough year next year. And right now, as of today, truck sales are down by 18 to 20%, and we haven't even talked about the increases as it relates to the tariffs, and these tariffs are a riding scale. I mean, anything could happen, tomorrow, and then we're going to have further increases. And the insult to injury, of course, is the diesel pricing today as well.
Yeah, no, it seems. I'm glad you mentioned all that, because as much as I have an emotional connection to trucking as a job and a career, and I get criticized about this a lot because I'm very nostalgic about all this stuff. It is still a business, and that's true. And it's a business that has just constantly, like I say, my buddy Chase up in BC, nobody will get out of his way to actually do something that everybody says they want. And everybody wants their groceries delivered, and they want fuel at their gas stations, and they want to go to Lowe's or Home Depot or your local lumber yard and have wood and building materials there, and everybody wants their local garden center to have their wood chips, and they want they want Casella to come and take all their garbage away, and all of that requires trucks. Everybody says they want the thing, but they're making it very impossible and very difficult for the people doing the thing to do the thing, right? And exactly. All of these things add up. And so what, Mark, so you're selling Volvos. This thing that's happening next year, this new 2027 mandate, does that mean, are you seeing a rush of people to buy all of your current inventory so they have new equipment and then they can ride out whatever issues that arise with the guinea pig new trucks?
Great question. So I do have several big fleets in the state of New York that have decided to pre-purchase and pre-buy. So this year I've working with two different fleets who have gobbled up about 80 trucks for before this pre-buy. However, I think the industry was expecting a huge intake and orders before this happened, and we're not seeing it at the volumes they thought they would because truck prices are still so high and diesel prices are so high. So we're seeing a lot of M&As, mergers and acquisitions taking place in our industry right now. Yeah, and we're seeing more and more and more of that. I think people
So
are going to hold out.
when you say mergers and acquisitions, where within dealerships, within trucking companies, like what type of M&As?
Both actually. You're seeing a lot of the one top, two top, rooftop dealers get out of the industry because you can't they can't survive. Um, Additionally, you're seeing these 50 to 200 truck fleets get gobbled up by some of these bigger carriers. We're going to see a lot more mergers and acquisitions over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and we're also seeing fleets just sort of get rid of some trucks. So like the fleet size is being reduced as well. So there's just a real sort of tightening on how many fleets are out there actively looking for new equipment, new routes, drivers, the whole thing.
So on that note, Zach, so all these there's mergers and acquisitions, and then there's tightenings, but there's still the volume of freight, the total market of
Yeah.
freight. So what does that say about openings and opportunities for the one truck sort of owner operator that I wish I could be if I had any friggin' money?
It's such a great question. And I will say where we're seeing, and you mentioned it, just like people still want their stuff, right? People want their stuff, people want their stuff, people want their stuff. What we're seeing in New York is the point of entry, and I'm pretty sure this is national, but I can just speak for New York. The point of entry is that owner operator, not so much over the road right now, it's last mile. And it's the opportunity to pick up routes within the last mile space. So it's massive in New York City, and we know it's really growing upstate because a lot of the airports have been renovated upstate, so there's more air cargo capacity, and there's shifting consumer demand. And also, in this equipment, it is smaller, a little bit less expensive. There are ways to enter at a financial cost that, although it's a cost, it's less than, the over the road costs, and it's also less than you're just opening up a retail business, right? So that's what we're starting to see for that. Hey, I want to get into trucking. I think, I see this as a viable entrepreneurial opportunity for me. That's where we're seeing that sort of growth, at least in New York. But that does mean that from the whole industry, and that's what we represent in Tanny, the entire industry. It is our fleet membership is as small as a single unit owner operator. It goes all the way up to national carriers. The bread and butter of our fleet membership are small to mid-sized businesses, for the most part, so family owned and operated. And that's where we're seeing some of this succession planning and M&A and some tightening there. But we're really seeing a lot in last mile. And so now, to your point too about how, hey, you have a friend who sees a problem and he's working to address it and everyone's getting in his way. We're seeing that from the regulatory side, people get in the way of the last mile and people trying to make it harder and harder and harder for that, guy with one truck wants to get into this to begin that operation. And that's on top of the cost of the equipment, the cost of the insurance, the cost of the diesel, et cetera, et cetera. Something has to give at a certain point here because the industry cannot continue to absorb these costs. And frankly, where you look at consumer pricing right now, the consumers really don't have a whole lot of capacity for more costs. So something has to give. And our hope is that, it would be the electeds who start to understand some of this and ease some of the burden on business rather than we see this real nasty situation, a nasty recession or something down the line.
Right. So
So
I want to tie something here to the sort of national, the sort of bigger federal level stuff on the point about last mile and small fleets. Uh, you guys are familiar with the term power only, where contractor has a truck and pulls trailers for other people, right? So
Okay.
that right, like Amazon Relay,
Mm.
99% of their trucks are subcontractors.
Right, right.
FedEx, and we're seeing the big fleets move to this. JB Hunt, Knight Swift, Werner. You go on their websites and they have like a big old ad right there. Come get our app, put it on your phone, move our trailers. We'll keep you busy. And they are even moving to like, wow, we can't afford trucks, we can't do anything anymore. But who is driving those trucks though? Because we keep being told, and this is where this was the seed of my discontent with the ATA many years ago, was when I started questioning this shortage of drivers narrative that's been around for a long time. And I have like a whole chapter in my book dedicated to this question.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have found, and a few other people have found in the academic work I've cited and various statistics and just putting all these things together, is that there's not a shortage of truck drivers. We have a very, very pernicious retention and churn problem, right? People get into the industry, realize what a shit show it is, realize how hard it is to make money, realize how little they're going to get paid for their efforts, realize that truck drivers are under federal law exempted from being paid overtime. And instead of doing anything about that, they just keep pushing the pressure down ever further. Yesterday, I was farting around online, and a there was an Indeed posting that somebody sent me a screenshot advertising a truck driver job at 26 cents a mile in 2026. Okay. When I first went on the road in 1997, we were being paid 37 cents a mile plus 6 cents a mile cash bonus for living expenses eating away on the road. So 43 cents a mile in 1997. 2026, and there's carriers out there paying their drivers 26 cents a mile. And we also have this problem, which ties into this other big federal thing with the English language proficiency stuff,
Yeah.
is that because local guys like me cannot afford to work for such little wages, we're starting to see the penetration of third world labor arbitrage onto American highways, and then all of the problems that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
So these opportunities for being an owner operator, doing last mile, having your own truck, especially with the M&As and tightening, what I'm seeing from researching my book and paying attention to the industry is that a lot of that stuff is going to these guys who showed up here yesterday under various refugee or asylum programs. Maybe they came here illegally, and now they're dominating this whole power only industry. And there's just no way for Americans to compete with that whatsoever.
Yeah, we're seeing that. And let me also say, to your point about the 26 cents a mile, that has caused significant problems in the freight market, right? Where, we have so many companies, so many Tanny members that are on the up and up, that do want to do the right thing. And now they're competing with these, unsustainable rates. And it's where, we've been in recession, specifically freight, for years now. To your point, there's not ideas about relieving that pressure. And we've seen similar things with, the non-domiciled CDLs, picking up some of these loads at really just absurd pricing. And I wish I had like an answer for you of, okay, and this is like the pathway to fixing it and fixing it. I don't think we have that right now, other than the fact that more and more people in the industry are seeing this as a very serious problem, like the flashing red problem. And then, with the non-domiciled CDLs, we are seeing federal action on that. And right now in New York, the state of New York and the Trump administration are not quite on the same page on that. And
You don't
hopefully,
say.
I know it's shocking, right? It's shocking. It's so hopefully that does get resolved because look, at the end of the day, we're talking about safety. We're talking about proper labor standards. We do want this to remain a viable career pathway for immigrant communities. That's always been a part of trucking. Just making sure this is done in a safe and proper way. I think that's what everybody, at the end of the day, what we all want and what we need to get to. But you're spot on that it is absolutely creating these problems. And, Mark made some really great points about everything that has been done in terms of efficiency and, emission reduction. And there's also been tremendous gains made with safety, with driver safety, with vehicle safety. And we don't want to backslide because we're basically just sticking anybody who raises their hand into a truck and paying them 26 cents a mile. I mean, like this is something we have to be hyper cognizant of, particularly in our high insurance, high litigation marketplace.
Not to mention, though, Gore, too, is that the problem is that it's the brokers that are taking the piece of the pie away. I know this is right up your alley, but that's a major problem. And then the dwell time between picking up the freight when you go into these warehousing facilities, poor drivers, they're not getting paid a wage to wait 8 to 10 hours. They're losing that time. I don't even know how it's legal to begin with. And in my opinion, then we didn't even talk about double brokering. So then you're just taking 60% of the pie that's available to be able to pay for the load. So the only people suffering here is the drivers.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So yeah, there's been a lot of discussion online here about brokers because this so finally, the mainstream media is starting to notice things that myself and my colleagues in sort of alternative trucking media, we'll put it that way, because all the mainstream trucking magazines kind of ignore me. But anyway, the broker thing has been very hot because 60 Minutes did 2 segments here in the last couple of weeks. One on this very shady outfit out of Chicago run by Serbian gangsters called Super Ego, who are facing a major lawsuit, investigations from the feds, trucks involved in numerous collisions, and they're just bad apples. And then they did another one about this Supreme Court ruling we're supposed to be getting in June, Montgomery versus Caribe, about the fact that the brokers have no liability for using all of these bottom feeding carriers, giving them work, and then they go and get in the accidents that they're bound to cause because they don't make any money, and so they're not maintaining their equipment, and they're not exactly being very choosy about the drivers they put behind the wheel. The brokers are doing this thing where they're saying, not our problem, that's up to the FMCSA and the state DOTs. They're supposed to enforce it. But at the same time, everybody always constantly accuses the government of not doing their jobs, or we don't want to pay them, or they're incompetent and we're going to withdraw your funding. And then the FMCSA, like some percentage of their staff are former ATA lobbyists who aren't exactly like on the driver's side of the fence about things. So we have all these problems, and the brokers are blaming the feds. The feds are saying, Derek Bars, God bless him, he just like walked into this mess and he's going to try and do some things, and he knows what all the problems are. Derek Bars and Secretary Duffy both came to the Mid-America Truck Show and glad-handed and talked to people. Bars was there for all 3 days, and he would talk to anybody. Tell me what you think the problem is. What can we do? So I think these guys appointed by Trump are trying to do something, and they're being very proactive in talking to truck drivers. But like you say, we have all of these multiple problems, right? Emissions mandates, fuel cost, brokers sucking out too much of the value, too many people on the road who shouldn't be, chameleon carriers. It's just like a whole great big huge bowl of spaghetti mess that with tails that go everywhere. And how do you unspool it? Like, what do we do?
I think more and more people in the United States, I mean, I give a lot of credit that for things that maybe aren't there, but I think people are starting to see it in their back pocket. So people are understanding now. I educate people every single day of my life. I know you do as well, Gord, that everything that we have, whether it be our groceries, our clothes, or whatever we have in our homes, are 100% coming from a truck, number one. The cost has increased, 4.5% increases in the cost of living over the past 3 months now, not to mention fuel. Fuel's a whole different thing. So these costs continue to go up and up and up and up, where people aren't spending money, can't afford to buy anything anymore. As this continues to get worse and worse, because everything that we're talking about today is pass through expenses to us, the consumers.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to continue the education process and start talking about and getting in front of these legislators to make change. Zach, anything you can add to that? Because we haven't really gotten too heavy into the insurance costs, but the reason for a lot of the community carriers too is that who can afford to insure their truck in the state of New York?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot there. I think, you're both spot on. I think this currently what's going on at FMCSA and DOT, they're looking at everything. They're really trying to shine that spotlight on everything and to improve safety and safety standards. So I think there's some good movement from the federal government. I think, to Mark's point specifically about the insurance, our Governor Hochul, Democrat governor, is working really, really, really hard on insurance reform and to make the insurance to basically recreate the insurance market in New York, because it doesn't exist for commercial auto right now. And I also want to say that whatever, was happening in the past in terms of what's going on with our drivers, do we have a shortage? Are we training them properly? Are we paying them properly? All these questions, they have trickled into every aspect of life. So it's not just that our government fleets can't find the electric equipment. They want to make sure that they are treating their drivers properly so they don't have to continually churn through truck drivers. So they're looking at that. We have a generation of young people now that are saying, this highly expensive, debt-funded college track that you forced us all to go on may not be right for everybody. What are other opportunities? Where is trucking, be it a driver or a technician or whatever? How do I get involved in that? And so I think you're right. There are a lot of real challenging headwinds that we're in. But there are also some really interesting things that we're starting to see bubble up on the horizon that I think, if they come together in the right way, will help address a lot of these really nasty challenges that we're working through right now.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's so many. I mean, we could spend hours here. I want to bring it back to the beginning when we were talking about electrification and clean cities, right? So there's a sort of intersection here, dwell time and clean cities. So some driver shows up in New York City from the West Coast with produce or with whatever from any other part of the country. As you got, what I saw some ridiculous statistic a few weeks ago about how many trucks cross all of the bridges into New York City every day. How many is that? 20,000, 30,000? It's just an insane high number.
It's a really high number. I mean, it's probably north of, if I had to guess, and I don't have it, I would say it's probably north of 30. I mean, I could tell you it's almost 14,000 a day just on the BQE alone. So
wow. Yeah. So all these trucks are coming into the city, right? New York is in the north, and it gets cold in the winter, and it gets really hot in the summer. So all these trucks are sitting around at Hunts Point or wherever, and name your distribution center throughout the greater sort of New York area, and then they sit and wait for 5 hours or 6 hours to get unloaded or reloaded or the waiting for whatever, not being paid because exempted from overtime pay and nobody gives a shit. And shippers just absolutely have been getting away with this for decades. And while they're sitting there in the heat, they're idling their trucks to keep the air conditioning going. Or if it's the wintertime, they're idling their trucks to keep the heat on. And one of there's such the detention thing, and some people call it dwell time, some people call it detention. This detention thing is such a huge problem. Like, never mind for idling trucks in an urban area like New York. A study was done by MIT. They had like a sort of sub school, MIT Freight Labs, and they ran a bunch of different research on trucks going in and out of facilities and the time it takes, and what's a good time to show up, what can facilities do. And across all that research, they came to this number that said if trucks did not get detained, we would save 40% of total truck capacity across the entire country, right? Like, so we're losing 40% of our capacity utilization every single day in detention. That's a huge number. That gets into the shortage narrative, right? Like, we need more drivers because a whole bunch of them are sitting all the time. We need more trucks because a bunch of them are sitting all the time. And while they're sitting, if it's cold or hot outside, they're idling the truck because a lot of these places do not provide facilities. There's the whole bathroom debate that I have opinions on that would be out around Genghis Khan somewhere. And but like, all of this stuff ties together, right? So like, let's say you're my nerd friend Ben Furness or somebody else in New York City, and you're trying to clean the air. You go to the people that run Hunts Point or whatever place and say, get these goddamn trucks moving. What do they say to you in return?
We're at staffing capacity.
We don't want to hire more people, or we don't want to poke them and get them to work faster. Like,
I mean, I think we get into some very territory that gets us all in a lot of trouble. No, I think I want to say it's a lot of we can't hire more people. This is the staffing that we have. There's also, there's a lot of how do pieces fit together. So we have the dwell problem, which is significant. Our infrastructure is really bad. It's really like these roads that these truck drivers have to travel are really, really bad. They are stuck in traffic. The roads are terrible. It wears down the equipment. That's just to get to the damn facility. Then, however long they have to wait at the facility, then they have to go back out to the customers in the traffic. Do they have loading zones? Do they have a place where they can safely offload? It's just like the challenges we put in front of these drivers day in and day out are massive. And you raised a really great point. And I'll just as an aside, one of the goals that New York City has is to increase the off-hour deliveries. And what we say as the industry is, it's like, yeah, we see the benefit. We agree with the benefit, but someone's got to be there to take the load, right? Like, use 24/7. We're 24/7. There'll be a driver who wants to take that freight at that time. Someone's got to open the damn door for them. Someone's got to open the freezer for them. Like, how are we doing that? And that's where the staffing shortages also have an impact. So we have an impact in, hey, are we making this for the driver's side? Are we making this appealing for people? Are we providing people what they need to come here and to stay here and to grow here? And then there's the flip side of, what are the customers paying? Are we staffing our Hunts Point and our JFKs and our, smaller industrial business zones in the way that they need to be staffed? Are we staffing our maintenance crews in the way they need to be staffed to maintain these roads? Like, are we doing everything we should be doing? The answer is, of course, no. And our frustration is always, we're always the bottom of the totem pole, right? So it's never about, yeah, you know what? We need to do whatever we can to make sure that these retail outlets and these restaurants and these bars are able to allocate staff to take off our deliveries. It's never, hey, are we staffing our freight hubs properly? Are we staffing our ports properly? Are we loading and churning these trucks in an efficient manner? That part doesn't reach the surface of the conversation. The part that reaches the surface of the conversation is, why isn't the trucking industry doing more? Why is it, what is going on with trucking? Why can't we move this stuff properly?
The people who are already doing everything possible.
Exactly.
I have a solution to this problem, actually, and I've thought a lot about it in terms of the trucks getting from A to B into the city. Why is there not a horses stables approach to it? So we want to clean air. You want to have warehouse space. New York is dying for. It's got lots of dead real estate. We got lots of warehousing availability outside of the city lines. Utilize it. We can't get people. Okay, don't. We're talking about autonomous. Let's do autonomy as it relates to warehousing, not into the trucking side. Make the jobs more viable for people to be able to have a good jobs. Use the horses stables approach. If they want to get into electrification, there's your last mile delivery from the stable to the in city environment. Everybody wins. Less traffic, less congestion. Horses stables approach to the concept. Ever thought about that?
I'm sure other people have thought about that, and I just, there's the whole idea of breaking down deliveries and just using smaller trucks. The nighttime delivery thing, we saw during COVID that a lot of businesses, especially public facing retail stuff like, all night diners and truck stops and restaurants and gas stations, they just couldn't get anybody to work third shift anymore. And there's a lot of places now, America very famously, when people used to come here from overseas, wow, everything's open all night, like it's 24/7, go, 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 hyper capitalism. And now there's just nothing happening at night anymore.
I know.
It's very strange.
It's very strange. I mean, yeah, honestly, even in New York City, like, pre-COVID, New York City bars closed at 4 o'clock, and like every day, 4 o'clock, and there was activity. Like there was activity. COVID laws, you couldn't do that. They rolled back the laws coming out of the pandemic, but still, most bars aren't staying open that late. Most restaurants are not staying open that late. You walk outside later in the city now, and it's just like, it's definitely the vibe is definitely off, I guess, to put it that way. And I think that's, we're seeing that across the board. There's a lot of change happening right now. And you said it, our responsibility is to deliver the freight, right? We have to deliver everything that people want. Well, people are a little unsure of what they want right now, I think, and that also adds to the cloud that's hovering over us.
Right. So I got one more question about things going in and out of New York City, because all of this stuff goes in and the trash must come out. So I've been living upstate now for 10 years since I immigrated here from Canada, and my spend a lot of time on 17. I used to do that when I was trucking down here from Ontario anyway. But if you spend any time on 17 or 81 or the thruway, you notice an awful lot of garbage scows. A lot of the garbage from New York City comes up here and gets put into holes in places, or in Pennsylvania, or I think even as far west as Ohio. And the garbage scow thing is very interesting to me, because New York has this weird thing called R permits, where you're allowed to be significantly heavier than a normal 80,000 pound truck. And the garbage scow guys use that, because New York City wants to pay as little as possible to get their garbage moved. So let's be efficient about it. So 4-axle quad trailers, and I don't even know what they're good for, like 120,000 pounds or something. But they have their own bottlenecks, right? Like, you would think that New York's trying to get their garbage out, like you could load 24/7 and unload 24/7, and you go to all these massive dump sites upstate, and there's a huge lineup of trucks every morning because they don't unload all night, and they have this little tiny window to get all this trash moved. And then, of course, they're paid by the load. So they all drive like maniacs, even though they got 120,000 on instead of 80.
It's really interesting because, what's the government playbook, right? Identify a problem, study the hell out of it, come up with recommendations, slow play the recommendations. So where a study was done, about, and this is regional, right? So it's not just New York, but New York is, of course, the heart of it. A study was done. How do we better move our trash around the Northeast corridor? I think we're in the waiting for recommendations phase, to be totally honest with you. That's kind of where the garbage situation is. Hyper local in New York City, some things the city did. I don't know how effective they're going to be, but what they did, they created a sort of franchise system for private waste haulers. So rather than have all these, like you say, all these haulers coming in, loading up 120, moving all around the city, and then upstate, it's supposed to be a little bit more centralized. So it's, oh, if you have your districts, handle your district, move it out, like try to make this move a little bit more efficiently. It's relatively new in place, so I don't know how well it's working, but that was one thing that the city wanted to do. So they did that. And another thing is sturdier and curbside trash receptacles. So rather than just the whole like let's pile our trash up on the sidewalk and someone will, it's just like a little bit more organized. Again, I don't know at this stage how much improvement that's going to have downstream, but it is one of the things the city is implementing to get this moving better. But I think we have a long way to go when we talk about the trash situations you raised.
I have a question about that I don't know the answer to, Zach. Is the to Gord's point of these trucks are 120,000 pounds, right? So, two questions come to mind. Number one, the trucks can't operate. It's okay that they have 120,000 pounds for New York State, but that's interstate, not interstate, so they can't haul it on the interstate. Number
No.
two, what about let's talk quickly about infrastructure and the roads being able to handle those weights and bridges. How old are the bridges? How old is the infrastructure? And what is it going to take? Is it going to be a bridge collapse that causes some change in this happening? You're more involved in that on a day-to-day basis. Are those things being discussed?
Yes, the weight issue is really being scrutinized. And it's not just with the haul, I mean, I guess I would say it's construction and waste management. I would say those are the two that are, and I know in a lot of cases they go hand in hand with carting, but there's really an emphasis on the weight right now. So there's camera enforcement, way in motion. It started on the BQE. First of all, overweight trucks are banned on the BQE, so that's one thing. So like already we're seeing if infrastructure gets to a certain level, ban, right? So like we're
Okay.
seeing that. To go hand in hand with that, there's the way in motion camera enforcement where, the hope is that if you ticket these repeat offenders enough, they're going to stop running overweight. I think in some cases they do, in other cases they reroute. It's not, that's the thing. Enforcement is a tool. It's not the solution. But it's certainly a tool. And we're having some really difficult conversations with the state and just saying, look, you have so many renegade actors. You also have some actors that are operating under very legal state permits that are highly scrutinized that, and then they're operating on some of these city roads where they're not in compliance. So we need to streamline, in some cases, we need to streamline the overweight system. And that will also better identify who's running recklessly and who isn't. And then, we can focus on how do we get those that are running recklessly, either off the road to improve behavior, all those things. But it is the weight and the infrastructure are big, big issues right now downstate, and they're looking at a whole host of things.
That's all very, very interesting. I had a gentleman on my show here twice. He's sort of like a safety consultant guy, and his name's Rob Carpenter. He's been working with Bars and Duffy, and he works for this outfit called Truck Safe, and he does all kinds of like consulting and legal stuff. And he started out as a driver, and he's been on all sides of this. Very, very, very smart dude. And we talked about the garbage hauling thing and all of the very, very peculiar requirements, and then just sort of cultural stuff. Because again, with drivers and retention, hauling garbage is not very much fun.
Yeah.
You go and sit in line at a dump somewhere, and it stinks. Your trucks always smell. The trailers just get the crap kicked out of them by the loading and unloading process. Always heavy, always in a hurry, because again, you're hemmed in by timing, and you're getting paid by the load, and just everything about that business makes no sense. But if garbage stops being moved, this is one of these sort of like civilizational level events, right? Like many years ago, the city of Toronto, under former mayor Rob Ford, who's passed on to the great beyond, we miss you, Rob. He tried to reform the sort of municipal waste system to try and address some of this stuff. And there was a major strike in Toronto in the middle of the summer. So nobody's garbage was getting picked up for like weeks.
Okay.
And it just like made everybody insane. Right. So like, it's great that like, they're looking at the weight stuff and streamlining and all that. But like, you have to like look at the whole system, because that's one of the things that will like, it's like one of these sort of like local politics things, right? Like if garbage doesn't move for like, let's say a month in New York City, how long until everyone starts losing their mind and then blames it on whatever administration is running the show at that time?
Oh, we got really close to it because we had those like really nasty blizzards beginning of the year this year, and there was a solid, I want to say 2 weeks where like in many neighborhoods the garbage was not getting picked up, and like so the garbage was piling up, the snow was piling up. It was really, really bad, and very much to your point, like the next snowstorm that hit, the city handled it significantly better because I think they knew just like, oh, and this is a new administration. We're off to a really, really, really bad start. We're leaving people's garbage. We're leaving people's dog shit. Like we got to get this cleaned now. And they did it. But I think you're spot on. Like it shows you how touch and go it is with something like, oh, the garbage isn't getting picked up. It's going to be a problem.
Right. So, Mark, well, I've still got you here. We had I don't know, would it be too spicy to talk about Volvo equipment in public? I don't know.
Depends on where we're going to go with the conversation, but hit me. I can say certain things.
Right. So, Volvo, a Swedish brand owned by a French company, Renault, or Renault, however you want to pronounce it. They also own Mack. I've driven a couple of Volvos in the past. I feel like their suspension system is so good that it separates you from the road and you don't actually feel it anymore. And that's a problem. And also, I just, as a purely aesthetic thing, I'm not into aerodynamic trucks because I think the obsession with aerodynamism as a fuel saving technology distracts everybody from the countless other ways we can save fuel without making the trucks look like shit. However, Volvo has some very interesting drivetrain technology, and some friends of mine are saving tons of money with it. You care to expound on any of that?
Gosh, loaded question. Are we talking about the new 2025 spaceship version looking Volvo versus Legacy?
I mean, whatever you want to say. Like I say, I just they're a sort of curious exotic species to me that I'm not very sure about.
Well, if we're talking about the new launch of the new VNL model, the spaceships that you've seen out there, due to the safety mandates that are coming, which are great things. I see a lot of good things there with it, with adaptive cruise, the forward-facing cameras, the rear-facing cameras, the aerodynamics to max out fuel economy. We've moved from 7-weight pistons to 14-weight pistons. Yes, we're getting in the 8s, sometimes 9, 10 miles per gallon these days, under a certain threshold of speed, obviously. So trying to control the speed too. So as you are well aware, depending on your gearing, we're running typically on a I shift, I torque spec. We're running about a 215 ratio, 455 horsepower, 1850 foot-pounds of torque, and keeping the speeds at about 65 miles an hour, which is the sweet spot to maintain that fuel mileage. The problem is that these trucks are so electronically smart with 35 different modules working off of a 24-volt system versus a 12-volt system, and you have any type of shortages in power, that creates a lot of modules not waking up and talking to one another, because every single one of those modules must talk to the other module. So you get a lot of ghost codes, things of that nature happening, which creates more downtime for folks that can't move freight. So I can share that with you at this moment. If there's particular questions you'd like to ask, I'm ready to answer them. But these trucks are very complex now, and as of today, it essentially feels like, well, it is true, is that these trucks are set up to be autonomous ready already. Trucks, smart trucks.
Speaking of autonomous trucks, some of their system manufacturers have been making very public, announcements about their testing regime, specifically Aurora down in Texas last year. And in the wake of that, I know one of their partners, Packer, was a little bit uneasy about the Aurora saying, "Hey, we don't even have a safety driver behind the wheel." I mean, the guy was sitting in the bunk or something, and wasn't that there was nobody in the truck. It was just he wasn't driving it and he wasn't sitting in the seat. Packer took some exception to this. And then also there's the question of, buy-in from other suppliers, including Volvo, right? So the autonomous truck system makers, for those who don't understand this, are not building trucks. They are building the systems which drive the trucks, right? They are not building any trucks, and they need you guys to provide them with trucks and to match their systems to yours. And so that's a very interesting point, that you guys are already making them kind of autonomous ready. But I think Volvo sort of poured some cold water on Aurora's marketing about this stuff, as if to say, yeah, we're not going to be able to deliver as many trucks as you guys are saying you're going to put on the road. I don't know. Do you know very much about that?
That's corporate level conversations that I'm not privy to. We as dealers have concerns that once we go autonomous vehicles, that what's the purpose of having a dealer network other than from a technology standpoint? So the industry feels like it's going to shift to direct purchases, kind of take the model of what Tesla is, and then you have essentially what a dealer becomes is a technology person for fleets, managing technological problems versus mechanical problems.
Right. Yeah. And I think, something that people also need to know about the autonomous systems, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. They might move the driver out from behind the seat, but you're not moving all of that cost, because all of these autonomous systems come with a subscription service package that you're tied into for the life of that truck. And if you don't keep paying for the subscription service, your truck is bricked in the driveway. So the savings I've seen is, they're advertising something like 25 to 40%. So you're not removing 100% of the driver's salary. You're only removing, 40 of it.
I've heard similar numbers. Yes.
Right. But with dealerships, right? So like a lot of trucking companies have sort of lease agreements where the dealerships are doing everything for them kind of anyway, right? So trucking company X leases 30 trucks from Ryder or Volvo or whoever, and then you guys are maintaining the trucks. You're doing everything. You're basically like, they've outsourced the entire equipment side of their trucking operation to dealerships or places like Ryder. And so, you say that like the dealership model would sort of transition, but I guess maybe there's already examples of that, or am I confusing the two things?
Actually at the dealer level, the percentage of leasing as a whole, even with the mega dealers, I do zero leasing. We don't lease a lot of trucks in the marketplace. Your larger dealers with 15, 20 rooftop, the Bruckners, M&Ks of the world, people like that from the Volvo side of things, that's probably about 10% of their model. The leasing and rental side is Penske Riders, and they're actually direct competitors with us, the dealers, because they're buying high quantities of vehicles at a much lower price. They get better pricing than us dealers do, and then penetrate the market that way through the leasing side of the business. Make sense?
Yeah, no, this is all fascinating. This is part of, I love hearing from people with more fine-grained details of how, various sides and angles of the industry work. So, um, that's all very interesting, sir. Was there anything we haven't got to yet? Was there anything you guys wanted to comment on? I've had you here now for nearly an hour and a half.
Zach, I think Zach, you covered a lot of the things, but what do you see in the next year as this year and moving into next year for the state of New York, and where are we going to focus the majority of our attention as it relates to these high costs that we're all being stuck with, and what it means to become a trucking business and a dealer in the state of New York, and where we are with kind of the advanced clean truck rule on this 2-year pause.
There's a very complex needle that we, and not just trucking, but business, community, and the reasonable elected officials need to thread over the next couple of years. And this is sort of year one of that project, and that is attacking affordability while navigating climate mandates. So they're not necessarily fully, on the same page, but basically we have an affordability crisis in New York. We have an incredible amount of red tape that businesses have to maneuver around. It is every single day that goes by is a harder day to operate a business in New York. Trucking business, top of the list. So we need to navigate that affordability crisis while also knowing that this is a blue state with a very robust environmental advocacy groupings. There is going to be climate policy in the state of New York, but the climate policy that exists currently is not workable. How can we roll some of it back while actually replacing it with viable policy, right? It's not just we're going to get rid of it to get rid of it. We are going to put viable policy in its place. And so it's going to be we have this year, there'll be an election in November. We'll see how that shakes out. There's a lot of institutional knowledge that's leaving the legislature. And that's retirement. That's just not me predicting election. That's people are retiring. While people are also leaving the state in pretty significant numbers. Businesses are leaving the state in pretty significant numbers. So these things are all really top of mind for anybody who really cares and values New York State. And they need to be addressed. It can't be a 5-year project, right? It's like, this is year one. I think next year will be a continuation of that, possibly into a third year. But if we're not seeing some successes over this, this year, next year, it'll be a very different picture in New York. So I think it's navigating the affordability with reasonable climate policy, I think are the two big high level things over the next year or two.
What is you and I talk about this all the time, but what is New York State doing today, Zach? As we know, New York State Independent SO said that still today in the state of New York, we're still operating at a close to 500 megawatt deficit as it relates to power infrastructure. As we talk about these climate changes moving forward and the goals, how are we going to overcome that, and at what cost? And knowing what we found out with municipalities, even to upgrade to get into the possibility of electric vehicles, each municipality would have to spend close to $5 million in infrastructure upgrades. And where does this money come? We're already taxed to death in the state of New York.
Mm-hmm.
what are the legislators thinking is the pathway to be able to do this that's sustainable so we all can afford a quality of life as well?
There is not a consensus on that. So there are those that sort of take a more holistic view, which is similar to industry, of we need an all of the above approach, which means things like, continuing to cultivate our partnerships with our friends in Quebec about hydropower, um, reestablishing nuclear power, wind power, while also fueling with more renewables and not an electric one size fits all. Those are the reasonable people. The others are not really looking at the power generation side at all, other than to say, oh yeah, we need more wind. And they're really just looking at electric. Vehicles have to be electric, buildings have to be electric. Any new construction has to meet X specifications. Oh, and by the way, we need to build more affordable housing, and it needs to be affordable, but it also needs to be state of the art in terms of their electric capability and all. So it's just like, yeah, there are people who do not understand how the real world works, and they are fighting right now with people in the legislature who do. And your question is a great one. How is it going to shake out? Don't know. I think a lot is going to be known over the next couple of weeks as New York finalizes their budget and as we sort of get a lot of bills moving through the chamber as we wrap up session here. But these are the big questions, these are the unknowns, and the clock is ticking because, like I said, people are leaving. Businesses are closing, businesses are moving, people are leaving. The population in New York is in decline. It is absolutely because it is unaffordable here. It is absolutely because the red tape is suffocating here. And, you know, either those that understand this and are working towards solutions are going to win out, or the radicals are going to win out. Hopefully, it's the reasonable people are the ones who win out, and we get some real game-changing policy in place.
Do you think it would ever change, Zach? And I hate to use this kind of terminology, but do you, when we think about this, and I don't know what percentage of people are leaving New York City, especially. I know a lot of people are leaving the state, but I don't know the exact numbers. But all these additional costs, when these people, radicals or whoever they are, or where they classify, when they go to their restaurant and all of a sudden the burger that they wanted to eat went from $10 to $50, is that going to be enough to push the needle forward? I mean, it's almost like we need to kind of put your money where your mouth is, for lack of a better phrase, to help people understand that all of this cost adds cost to everything that we do.
Exactly. That is where, I certainly wish people made that connection a little bit stronger that, oh, this is so expensive. Maybe we could provide relief for the trucking industry. Like maybe we could make truck drivers' jobs a little easier. Wouldn't that be something? But people are leaving and they are making their purchasing decisions. So I do think restaurant volume is down in most places. Or people are, they're not going as often. I think they haven't quite made that like light bulb connection yet, which is frustrating, but they have started to just pare back their habits a little bit. But I don't know where that breaking point is because honestly, I would have thought it would have happened already. That's the thing that's a little surprising, where like a couple of years ago, I was at a bar in Midtown and a beer, or your regular Stella cost like $18. And I was like, this is insanity. This is absolute insanity. And I thought, well, certainly no one is going to stand for this. And nothing happened. They actually went forward with congestion pricing. Like it's just, I don't know. I don't know where it's exactly going to hit, where people are just like, we need to take a step back here because this is crazy. But I would have thought we hit it already, and we haven't exactly yet.
It hasn't got bad enough.
It's wild.
Yeah, you just what's the phrase? Suddenly and then all at once.
Yeah.
I Yeah, again, I'm an immigrant here. Moved for love. I do like it. I like where I live here in upstate New York near Ithaca. It's very beautiful. Lots of cool things happening. But if I may be so bold, my participation in the trucking industry has kind of waned over the years because it's very difficult to get a job that actually pays. It's very difficult to get a job where I feel like my skill and craft are honored. No offense to Volvo, no offense to Mark, no offense to the people that want to put this technology in there, but I'm not driving a truck with lane assistance and front collision avoidance systems on them. I'm just not doing it. I do that. I am the lane maintenance guy. I am the front collision avoidance guy. I have 30 years in the industry where I've never run into anybody or caused a collision. And I really resent the idea that I have to have a ghost in a machine tell me how to drive the truck that I've been doing my whole life and third generation in my family of doing such. Uh, Camera watching me while I'm driving the truck? Nope. ELD? Nope. Not doing it. I'm just not doing it. And, New York's the kind of place that loves that shit. And also, that runs into another problem where upstate is kind of like northern Pennsylvania, for good or for ill. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But a lot of people here, it's that we have this overtaxation and regulation, and we also have employers who are living in the past where it concerns wages and offering really, really ridiculously low amounts of money to do the work. So I've just run into all this stuff since I've been here and kind of checked out of it, because I'm not I'm not driving these new trucks. I'm not going to be surveilled. I'm not going to have my own skills and competency undermined by technological mandates that are built for the fact that nobody wants to make skilled and competent truck drivers anymore and believe we can just have robots do everything, right? So if you're a guy like me, if not for my family, would I stay in New York if I still wanted to keep on trucking? Or would I have to commute and go drive truck somewhere else and then come home every couple of months? I don't know. There's strange decisions. I also have two little girls at home, so maybe I'm a unique case, but it certainly hasn't been the best place for me to move as a truck driver. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think and I think that's where you know, some of this is what happens when, as you spoke about earlier, where you start with, we just need a warm body in there. We're gonna pay crap, get in there. Well, lo and behold, bad things happen, and then it's, oh, we got to make sure the bad things don't happen, and that's where you get some of the technology, and then um you also have companies that are just being squeezed by their insurance rates, as we talked about, and there are so many reasons why this is so frustrating, right? And there are so many reasons why people are looking at this industry and saying, I'm going to pick a different career. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, we need to stop that. And we need people to pick this as a career and not just a job, not just I'm going to do it for a year or two or whatever. It's like, no, we want you here for your career. And that is, while we're dealing with all the other stuff we mentioned, the workforce development side of it is also just like high, high, high on the list, right? And so it's talking about so many changes that have to be made in a climate where there is very little profit margin to do it in, navigating these high tax, high regulatory I was going to say environment, but like that's what they have to navigate while trying to create this desirable workforce and, treat the professionals in this industry with that level of respect that they have earned. This is why, it is such a challenge. This is one of the things that keeps me up at night. And I know Mark and I talk about a million different topics, I think, when we're talking with each other, but this the fear in New York right now of when we say New York's like, in bad shape, you covered on all these different aspects of it. that make it rough. And so because there are all these different aspects, it's not like there's one solution. I think the best we can do, and we've said this multiple times, is you start treating this industry with more respect. You start easing some of these unnecessary burdens. We could start to take it from there and start to grow in the way we need to grow. But if, the finger is still on the scale, and if it's just costs go up and up and up and up and up, nothing is going to improve for anybody.
Right. On that question, so I'm going to ask you one more thing, and then I'm going to shut her down here. I've kept you guys an awful long time, and I appreciate your generosity with that. All these problems that we're discussing specifically here in New York, workforce development, all the regulations. Is anybody from the sort of like world of academia, or like, so, I'm sitting 8 miles away from Cornell University, Ivy League institution. Cooperative extension works with all kinds of agriculture and various other things here in the state and in other states. Industrial labor relations school at Cornell. I would think that this would be like red meat for them, not knowing anything else very much about them. I'm just sort of curious if the Trucking Association of New York has worked with any sort of like labor academic bodies such as that to sort of like, hey, what can we do here?
You want to go?
I think you go because this has been a hot topic as of lately in the Trucking Association of New York. So I
Yeah.
take it. I can speak on
So
the colleges.
yeah, so we have a workforce development arm at TANI, the Shea Legacy Foundation, and Shea Legacy Foundation has done an incredible job penetrating the community college and trade school marketplace. Terrific job, as well as the prison system. Terrific, terrific job there. In terms of I will also say a good job in terms of those universities that offer freight planning and like urban planning, getting some decent relationships there. But to answer the question at the higher level that you asked it, I would say that is not something that we've seen. There hasn't been that kind of interest. And frankly, to the extent it does exist, the conversations do tend to be on some of the things that you raised as red flags. More technology. How do we create these camera systems? How do we create these telematic systems? How do we, the ELDs? It's just like, and
All tech, no humans.
right. And look, honestly, to us, it's the incorporation of both, right? You can never take out the human factor. These are tools. The human needs to operate these tools, and they need to operate it to the best of their ability and all that. But where are the high level academic conversations? It is on that, right? It is not on the improvements of the job on the ground. It is not necessarily the other than the urban planning classes, which are very specific and tied into a broader picture. It's the actual movement of things. It has been a frustration, and it's a frustration not just for our industry. We're seeing the ripple effects in our economy, and we've had a really good conversation today about autonomous trucks and autonomous trucking. What's that looking like? Well, the thing that was left unsaid until now is, well, what about the AI wiping out all the white collar jobs, that they're coming for? So you're talking about from academic institutions, there's a major course correction that's going to happen at that level. It would be nice if they started looking at places like us at a larger view than they did. But, to circle back to your actual question, no, not at that level.
Yeah, Gord, how could you expect that? I mean, even with these Ivy League schools, when we talked about electrification, they weren't even interested in talking electrification on their own vehicles. They run the dirty diesels with the refrigerated trucks that idle all day long to move from one facility to the other facility and warehousing that they in a 10-year duty cycle they put 30,000 miles on a vehicle, right? But wouldn't talk about electrification. So there's the hypocrisy there at Ivy League school. To the legacy and yes, the Shea Legacy Foundation is doing a fabulous job with the outreach in these BOCES, community colleges, different and prisons and so on. However, when they go to the high schools and things like that, to do these career days, the parents push back on the industry itself as being dirty jobs and not jobs that have any type of teeth to them for their future. So there's a lot of learning that needs to take place there too with parents. And unfortunately too, some of it comes down to what these schools are telling people in terms of expectations, because we see it at the dealer level that you can come out of a school and go make $30 an hour right away, and it in the real world, Gord, it just doesn't work that way. We start at a higher wage and give tools for people to learn, to become a technician, advance them as fast as they possibly can to get to $35 to $40 an hour job. But that takes 2 years of experience and time and putting in the effort to do that. So the expectation's too high too for folks, and we're still not getting the buy-ins from the parents on that level.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion about yeah, I mentioned in my book that we're presented with a challenge. We're gonna take all your jobs away with robots, but we still need drivers between here and when the switch gets flipped. How do you convince people to take this on as like a very challenging, hard, dirty job, as you put it, knowing that one day the value scraping class are going to come along and say, nope, you guys are out of here now, we have robots. And the government's already poured so much money into CDL mills and training people and subsidizing the retention and churn problem. Is anyone going to come and retrain or pay off all the truck drivers the minute that switch gets flipped? That's a whole other conversation. But I will be speaking at Cornell about this stuff. Did I tell you about that, Mark?
No.
Oh, shoot. This Thursday, April 30th, 5:30, at the law school, Myron Taylor Hall.
Okay.
I think room 182. I'll send you the link for it. There's these guys called Heterodox Academy who sort of have, members at universities across the country. The Heterodox guy at Cornell was like, hey man, you're right here and you wrote this book, come talk to us. So I'm doing a presentation about my book and all the problems in trucking. It'll be 90 minutes, so I'll talk for an hour and then take questions from the audience, and it's free, anybody can come. If you're not busy, Thursday at 5:30, you should come by.
Yeah. Is it going to be a Zoom or is it going to be
So I will be in a lecture hall giving a lecture, and I'll have a little PowerPoint, which I'm going to work on as soon as I shut this down. And then it will be recorded if you can't make it. And then you can watch it later if you want. But yeah, I'll have a live audience. There's going to be people there, Cornell people, various members of the public, and whoever decides to take me up on my invite.
Do send me the invite and let me see if I can work that out. I would love to be there and I can ask lots of questions. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. But hey, speaking of questions, thank you guys so much for answering mine and having this very interesting conversation about how all of this stuff works here just in New York State. Micro versus macro, and there's a lot of folks who are not from New York who have various ideas about the place, and hopefully they listen to this and get a little bit of clarification and understand that New York contains multitudes.
Indeed.
Exactly. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this. As soon as I get it all edited and released, I'll send it off to you. And again, thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for listening. Go buy my book, End of the Road: Inside the War on Truckers. Can people are you guys on social media anywhere? How do people find Tanny?
Our website is nytrucks.org, and we're on, we have links to all our social apps on there. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn myself.
Mark?
Same. LinkedIn, all the social media groups, Bird Truck and Trailer Sales, Mark Stone, New York State lobbyist, general manager, tractor sales, Bird Truck and Trailer.
Right. I'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes if people want to chase you down after. Thanks again for coming, and way of the road.